Hello there and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is L24 World News Program, streaming live from the capital Algiers. And coming up next in our news program, Britain's first flight to take asylum seekers to Rwanda has been cancelled. Saudi Arabian senior administration officials have said that US President Joe Biden will meet with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Last bridge connecting Donetsk to Lysychansk was blown up, trapping hundreds of civilians. NATO Secretary General John Stoltenberg says that Western countries should send more heavy weapons to Kiev. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. Britain's first flight to take asylum seekers to Rwanda has been cancelled after the European Court of Human Rights issued injunctions to stop the deportation of a handful of migrants on board. The United Kingdom plans to start sending thousands of asylum seekers to East African country, a plan criticized by many opponents. Nabil Khazini has more to tell.
There were 7 asylum seekers in this plane, which was about to fly to a destination forced by a new controversial law to send illegal migrants from the UK to Rwanda. But after a late intervention from the European Court of Human Rights, the plane supposed to carry out the first deportation mission remained grounded, and the flight was suddenly cancelled.
Whose immediate ancestors came to this country to seek a new life.
The decision is a significant and embarrassing blow for Boris Johnson, who, although admitted that Britain is a country which historically welcomed immigrants, defended his government's widely criticised new extradition plan.
We want people to be able to come here in fear of their lives, but we want them to do it legally and safely. And that's why we have all the safe and legal routes that are open to people. What we want to do is to show the people traffickers that they're breaking the law, they're risking people's lives, and it won't work anyway.
And there in Rwanda, with an equal motive, the government, not discouraged, assures it remains committed to its partnership with the UK.
There are not many solutions. People are suffering. The asylum system is broken. It's being taken advantage of by criminal gangs that are exploiting people, making false promises. People are risking their lives in these dangerous crossings.
Sending illegal migrants 7,000 kilometers away has been hugely criticized by groups supporting asylum seekers, who urge the government to change course and provide a fair way for people fleeing oppression to seek refuge in the United Kingdom.
They're saying, oh, you can apply for safe routes, but those safe routes don't exist. The only way for someone to reach Britain is mostly through irregular crossings. It may be, the back of a lorry with a forged visa or a tourist visa, but then applying for asylum.
Boris Johnson hinted that his country could leave the European Convention on Human Rights to make it easier to remove illegal migrants from the UK. A show of how much Britain is devoted to start sending thousands of asylum seekers to the East African country at all costs.
To a different matter now, Saudi Arabian senior administration officials have said that US President Joe Biden will meet with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. During his visit to Saudi Arabia, US President is expected to explore cooperation between the two friendly countries and discuss ways to confront challenges facing the region and the world.
Commitments from the Saudis don't relate to anything having to do with energy. It happens to be a larger meeting taking place in Saudi Arabia. That's the reason I'm going. And it has to do with national security for them, for Israelis. I have a program. Anyway, it has to do with much larger issues than having to do with the energy.
A new report commissioned by the United Nations Human Rights Council accused Zionist entity of inflaming tensions with the Palestinians and prolonging the conflict through the perpetual occupation of Palestinian land and discrimination. The high-level team of investigators appointed last year by the United Nations Human Rights Council released an 18-page report where the Zionist entity occupation of Palestinian territory was identified as the underlying root cause of recurrent tensions.
The persistent discrimination against Palestinians throughout the West Bank and East Jerusalem, threats of forced displacement, demolitions, settlement expansion and settler violence, and the blockade of Gaza all have contributed to and will continue to contribute to cycles of violence.
French President Emmanuel Macron met Wednesday his Romanian counterpart Klaus Iohannis for bilateral meeting. During a state visit to Romania, Macron met with 500 French soldiers stationed in Romania who are part of NATO's response to Russia's military operation in Ukraine. Macron praised the troops for honoring commitment to defend Europe. The French president will then visit Moldova before a possible visit to Kiev on Thursday. Last bridge connecting Severodonetsk to Lysychansk was dammed up, trapping hundreds of civilians. The two cities are now the focus of a fierce battle between Russia and Ukraine for control of the Donbas industrial region in the eastern of the part of Ukraine. Hissam Burkan on what's follow.
Developments in the city of Severodonetsk are accelerating in favor of the Russian army, with Ukraine declaring its fear that Moscow will mobilize all its forces starting from Tuesday to occupy the city in Donbas. Zelensky admitted incurring heavy losses and stressed that the defense of the Donbas will give an indication of who will dominate the region.
We have losses, unfortunately, and they are painful. We have to hold on. This is our state. It is vital to stay in the Donbass. The more the enemy suffers losses there, the less strength he will have to continue the defense of the region is essential to give an indication of who will dominate in the weeks to come.
In turn, the Russian Defense Ministry revealed that it offered Ukrainian fighters sheltering at the Azot chemical plant in the town of Severodonetsk, eastern Ukraine, the opportunity to surrender. In addition, the ministry announced the opening of a humanitarian corridor for civilians trapped in Donbas as the last bridge that connects Severodonetsk with neighboring Lysychansk has been destroyed by Ukraine to reduce the pace of Russian attack, according to Moscow. Both cities are at the heart of the battle for Ukraine's Donbas region.
In the same line of thought, NATO General Secretary John Stoltenberg says that Western countries should send more heavy weaponry to Kiev to help it fight the Russian army that is advancing in the eastern part of Ukraine. Islam Seed.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that Western countries must build out high readiness and send more heavy weapons to Kiev to help it fight the Russian army.
Yes, Ukraine should have more heavy weapons, and NATO allies and partners have provided heavy weapons now for actually a long time, but they're also stepping up. There will be a meeting tomorrow at the NATO headquarters in the contact group for support to Ukraine.
The alliance members meet on Wednesday in Brussels with U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to accelerate the arms deliveries. Stoltenberg said NATO will deliver further strengthening of the alliance when all 30 members meet at the end of the month in Madrid.
On the need to continue our strong support for Ukraine, both in the short term but also over the longer term. And I look forward to welcoming President Zelensky to address NATO leaders at our summit in Madrid.
Many European leaders hail Stoltenberg's decision, including Polish Prime Minister, who said more support is needed for Ukraine.
That's why I urge you, I ask you to do much more to deliver weapon, artillery to Ukraine. They need this to defend their country, to defend their territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Ukraine is continuously asking Western countries for more advanced weapons to resist in the conflict in its lands. However, it accuses some European countries of taking slow steps instead of moving fast.
The Foreign Ministry of Russia said on Tuesday that many British journalists, British media representatives and defense figures have been barred from entering Russia as a response by Moscow to Western sanctions for spreading misinformation about Russia. China's economy showed signs of recovery in May after decreasing in the prior month, as industrial production rose surprisingly, but consumption was still weak, underlying the challenge for policymakers amid the persistent drag from strict COVID curbs. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights on Tuesday urged member states to intensify pressure on Myanmar's military amid continued reports of violence and human rights violations in the Asian country. The government of Myanmar, also known as Burma, is already under multiple layers of US sanctions since a military coup ousted the democratically elected government in February 2021. The United Nations World Food Programme suspended the help to at least 1.7 million hungry people in South Sudan, blaming critical funding shortage. The cut comes at the worst time possible, with Sudan facing unprecedented hunger amid climate shock and increasing food prices. Food security experts have warned that 1.4 million children will suffer from this problem in this season.
More than 2/3 of the South Sudanese population are experiencing a serious humanitarian and protection crisis and require humanitarian assistance to survive. Of these, we estimate that 8.3 million people, including internally displaced persons and refugees, will endure acute, severe hunger during the lean season.
The Democratic Republic of Congo condemned Rwanda for supporting and financing the M23 rebel group, which captured a key trading hub near the Ugandan border. According to local activists, M23 rebels in Democratic Republic of Congo seized the eastern border town of Bongona, forcing more than 30,000 inhabitants to escape to Uganda. The arrest of indigenous leader and chief organizer of this week's protest against Ecuadorian President Lasso has further heightened tensions in the nation and led to calls for more radical actions. Zara Fajani has more to tell.
Clashes broke out in several cities in Ecuador on Tuesday after police arrested the leader of the country's largest indigenous organization, Leonidas Aiza, who had led blockades on several highways in protest against the government's economic policies. The indigenous groups began what they called an ongoing protest to demand President Guillermo Lasso freeze the price of gasoline, declare a suspension on small farmers' bank debts, and limit oil and mining expansion in the country.
We do no harm. Rather, we need life, dialogue to be able to live as human beings. So I say to the president that it's time to speak, because the people need to work, to eat.
Comrade Aiza is our indigenous president. He was arbitrarily detained. He was directed to the city of Quito. And this is a very unfair because he claims with his own right. He has the right to demonstrate, but without destroying private property.
The Ecuadorian government confirmed the stability of the situation in the country after the first day of the protests.
The situation is stable. There has been no multiplication or increase in the sites taken by the demonstrators, with the exception of 2 points in the province of Cañar.
Ecuador is currently grappling with the rising levels of inflation, unemployment and poverty. Since 2020, the cost of diesel has almost doubled, while the price of petrol has also increased sharply. The indigenous leader has warned before his arrest that the demonstrations are for an indefinite period until their demands are met.
Brazilian police on Tuesday arrested the second suspect in the investigation of the disappearance of British journalist Dom Phillips and indigenous expert Bruno Pereira in the Amazon rainforest in western Brazil. Oseni da Costa de Oliveira, also known as Dos Santos, aged 41, was under temporary arrest and he was involved in the case with his brother Alvarado da Costa de Oliveira, who was arrested last week, the federal police said a statement. France's hard-left veteran Jean-Luc Mélenchon said that President Emmanuel Macron's party was beaten and defeated on Sunday after his new left-wing alliance made a strong showing in the first round of parliamentary elections. Exit polls showed that Macron is not guaranteed to win an absolute majority in parliament.
Au terme de ce premier tour,
with regards to this first round, the new Ecological and Social People's Union have come out on top and will be present in more than 500 constituencies in the second round. And so the projections of seats at this moment don't make sense, other than to maintain an illusion, and we hope our adversaries will be stunned. For the rest, the truth is that the presidential party with regards to the first round is beaten and defeated.
Est battu et défait.
After Algeria blockaded the trade of a diplomatic dispute about the status of Western Sahara, which led to hundreds of protests against the decision, and as a retaliation to the Spanish stance, the Minister of Energy and Mr. Mines, Mr. Mohammed Arqab, received the Russian ambassador to Algeria, Mr. Igor Believe, at the ministry's headquarters. The two parties reviewed the status and prospects for strengthening the two countries' cooperation in the field of energy and mines. Algeria and Canada expressed their satisfaction with the quality of the bilateral political relations and agreed on the need to continue strengthening political dialogue through the intensification of high-level visits, according to a press release from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This took place during the work of the third session of Algerian-Canadian political consultation in Algeria, co-chaired by the Secretary General of the Algerian Foreign Affairs Ministry, Rachid Shakib Gaid, and the Canadian Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cynthia, as part of the strengthening of bilateral relations.
I agreed with my Canadian counterpart on the need to continue and strengthen political dialogue by intensifying high-level visits between the two countries, and also highlight the most important developments witnessed by the political situation in Algeria.
We talked about political, commercial, and also cultural relations. There are many opportunities to improve relations between the two countries.
According to a statement by the Algerian Minister of Energy Mohammed Arqab and Youssef Ashmaili, the Jordanian Minister of Industry, Trade and Supply, agreed on a program and selected a group to implement measures to study possibilities of supplying Jordan with crude oil, liquefied natural gas. The Algerian minister called on Jordanian companies to invest in the mine sector in Algeria, particularly in the areas of mineral exploration, gold, fertilizer production, and phosphate conversion. Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman received on Tuesday at the government the palace Sheikh Faisal bin Qasim Al-Thani, chairman of the board of directors of Qatari Businessman Association, and with his accompanying delegation. Based on a statement from the ministry, during the meeting, the two parties agreed on accelerate the path of bilateral work. Thus, they discussed the huge investment opportunities offered by the Algerian markets, especially in the fields of agriculture, industry, tourism, health, transportation, and other promising fields of mutual benefit. And now let's have an international news in this roundup.
A mere walk through the main competition aisle of Tribeca Immersive, the event's relatively new showcase of virtual and augmented reality experiences, will make it clear why organizers have opted to officially change the Tribeca Film Festival's name to Tribeca Festival. There is quite literally nothing about any of the selections that reminds of traditional films.
The 7 exhausted members of the K-pop supergroup BTS have announced they are taking time out from the band to focus on their solo careers. The globally popular artists, who are credited with generating billions of dollars for the South Korean economy, dropped the bombshell during their streamed annual dinner on Tuesday night, part of celebration that marks their anniversary as a group.
Annecy, the capital of animated film, every June with its festival, which has become the largest in the world. More than 100,000 spectators, 100 countries represented, and more than 500 films screened.
June's full moon is illuminating the sky around the world this week. The strawberry moon appeared on Sunday and will set on Wednesday, according to NASA. The final moon of spring, the biggest and brightest supermoon, is the first of 2 consecutive supermoons this year. This phenomena occurs when the moon moves closer to the Earth in its elliptical orbit while in its full phase.
Mob artifacts, including some that were featured at the Las Vegas Mob Experience at the Tropicana, will be auctioned off by the end of August in California in the United States. Some highlights of the collection include a handwritten letter from Al Capone to his son. The letter discusses details of Capone's experience at Alcatraz and how he looked forward to being reunited with his family.
To this end, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main top stories. Britain's first flight to take asylum seekers to Rwanda has been cancelled. Saudi Arabia and senior administration officials have said that US President Joe Biden will meet with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The last bridge connecting Severodonetsk to Luhansk was blown up, trapping hundreds of civilians inside. NATO Secretary General John Stoltenberg said that Western countries should send more heavy weaponry to Kiev. That's all for now. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.